One of the Liberal MPs in attendance at that meeting, Ken Hardie, represents the riding of Fleetwood Port Kells in BC. He joined us last week after that big caucus, and he joins us again tonight after this one. Hi, Mr. Hardie. Good to see you again.
And good to see you too. I owe you this one after your kind invitation last week. So I can't imagine what you want to talk about.
I can't imagine either. I think it's a good opportunity for our audience to kind of take stock of what you said a week ago when you were very frank with myself and everyone watching about how it had gone down in caucus, and then a week later your sentiment at this point. How are things, from what you can describe to us, compared to what they were like a week ago?
Well, of course, the usual rule with caucus is what happens in caucus stays in caucus. I can give you my reflection, but I won't reflect on what anybody else said or did. What I saw today could only be better if I'd written it myself. No, I got answers today that I really, really like. Now, the nature of those answers, et cetera, of course, have to stay inside caucus because, when you're talking about things moving forward, you obviously don't want your competition to know what you're up to.
So I think if I remember correctly, last week you had primarily wanted to find out what might change going forward, what the proposition to voters is, if it is in fact a change election that would keep your party in office. Do you feel like you have an answer to that question?
I think there's a framework that addresses what I was looking for quite nicely, actually, yes.
And do you feel that is a sentiment shared by your colleagues?
I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you. Everybody leaves a room like that processing information, and we talked about this last time. I can only speak for myself, and as I say, I was really pleased by what I heard. I think that you and media will be interested in things that will be coming out, and I think our friends over on the Conservative side will have a few things to be worried about.
So let me ask you, what is in the public domain then? Because I understand your point about not being able to share the details of what was discussed. There has been reporting already that there will finally be some ads. Is that something that you support?
Well, I think we do need a story to tell, and in fact, that kind of dovetails into the kind of things that I hope to be talking about a lot more. I mean, while everything was happening last week, we saw interest rates fall, we saw the inflation fall, we saw job numbers for a second month in a row exceed expectations. So there were a lot of very good fundamental pieces falling into place last night economically, and as we discuss things at home, with our constituents, we're still really, acutely aware that the cost of housing, the cost of food, et cetera, are continuing to weigh down on people. And it's universally accepted that, especially government has to do something about that. Opposition, of course, can make all kinds of, promises and premise as they wish, but it does fall to the government to handle these issues that are really important to people. And I think going forward, you can expect to see some steps taken.
Interestingly, the messaging, I think, from your government, and in particular at the cabinet level thus far, has been we are doing things. Canadians just don't realize how much we are doing for them on those very issues that you point to. Is that message going to change?
Well, I think the fundamental thing, and it's something that, in our discussions outside of caucus that we have, is that people will tend to forget government programs very shortly after they're brought in. And certainly there should be, in our view, an effort to remind people of, in fact, what the government has done so far, because that sets the table for what you and I talked about in our conversation last week. It sets the table for, well, what's next? Right? And that's... Will
there be an answer provided to that question? Because thus far, I think it's fair to say there hasn't been.
Well, it's something that a bunch of us are looking for.
And did you receive, I guess, are you under the impression that it will happen?
Well, again, all I can do is speak for myself and say that what I saw today, I really liked.
If you do keep on with that status quo messaging, like I understand what your government is saying, that we have done stuff. Right? And I know there have been tangible impacts to the daycare program, the Canada Child Benefit. But I also think I can't ignore what Canadians convey to me, or what is borne out by public opinion polling, or the outcome in those two by-elections, which is, regardless of the stuff that you have done, Canadians don't feel as though your government is making their life better or easing the challenges that they face. Do you really think a campaign can counter that?
It'll have to. As serious as that. You know, I think that, you know, the work that as individual MPs at home will be to go out and have those conversations with people. I mean, when we're out door knocking in our riding, I have a very, very simple script. Somebody answers the door, I say, how's it going? And that's really interesting because if it's top of mind for them, they're going to tell you. If you say, well, are we doing enough for left-handed people in Lithuania? They might give you an answer that they might regret 20 minutes later. But if they've been thinking about it, that's really what you want to find out. What is actually front of mind for people? And it is the cost of food. It is the cost of housing and rent. Now, in addition to all of the other things that have happened over the last week, there are now stats out that suggest even rents now are starting to fall in places like Vancouver and in Toronto. So you're out to rent an apartment, you're going to get a quote from the landlord that is less than it would have been maybe 3 or 4 months ago. Okay, I don't know if this is a trend or not, but if it's a sign, we'll take it.
I guess the only issue is, despite those signs, in a little bit of incremental better news, when you take in the aggregate over the past 2 years, the degree to which those rents have increased, or food, I mean, we're talking 20 to 30%, a 2% change on the margins or anything incremental, people just don't feel it. And is that perhaps why you're 20 points behind? And I guess I wondered, like, can you actually close that?
Well, of course we have to. Yeah, we have to. There's no doubt about it. And we have to do it actually for the sake of the country, not just for the sake of the Liberal Party or the leader or, you know, whoever replaces me, because I'm retiring after this one, so I'm in kind of a sweet spot, you know. But I think that the work that I want to do between now and whenever the election is to, first of all, keep supporting our riding, but secondly, to you know, work both ends of it. Be the voice of my riding here in Ottawa with my colleagues and in the House. And that's obviously something that every MP has to do. And I think that as we turn our focus to the future, you know, and electoral prospects, it is going to be what we will be spending our time thinking about.
So as you say that, and as you turn attention, as you characterize it, to the future prospects, is the question in your mind of the Prime Minister's leadership settled?
Yes.
And
it is.
Why is that?
Well, I think that I made up my mind that whatever he decided, he had the right to decide, and he has made that decision, and I will support that.
And what about the rest of caucus? And not to say you're speaking for them, but can you impart on Canadians watching tonight a sense of whether or not what happened last week and the sentiment that underpinned it is truly something the party will be able to move on from?
As I say, I can't speak for my colleagues. What I can say, though, is that I was very happy with what I heard in caucus today.
Do you support a secret ballot?
No.
Why not?
Nothing would come of it.
Why?
You know, I mean, you know, it's not really a mechanism that is actually necessary at this point. You know, we have a leader who's an excellent campaigner. We have the framework for going forward that I quite like. So let's stick with the guy that has done good work in the past, just like we want Canadians to stick with the party that's done good work for them.
What do you do, though, with the group of people who don't feel that the person you do think can campaign his way out of this polling deficit will be able to do that? Like, what do you do with people in your own caucus who are unsure of that?
Well, me personally, I don't do anything because it's above my pay grade, if you want to call it that. Well, no, I think that you know, generally speaking, the processing, the working through that was set up after last week's caucus meeting is still a work in progress. But you know, again, 1 week later and one more caucus meeting under our belts, all I can say personally is I've liked what I've heard. I feel very positive.
I will leave it on that note, Mr. Hardie. Thank you, as always. Appreciate your time.